All right, peeps, we are here for the finale, the final dating and relationships Q&A. It's a it's a solemn day. It's a solemn day. I know. I know. I know. I know. It's been a long run. And this on Twitter. Yep, it's been a good run, guys. It's been a good. It's been a good run, and I am sorry that this is going to be the end of it. I'm sorry that we're closing up shop. It's the reasons for it are um kind of apparent, would say. It's Look, some of this is a practical business decision, some of it's personal. Um on a practical level, the Q&As don't get the engagement of other videos. And part of the reason for that is that nobody really knows what's going to go in the Q&A. Now in the past, I would take some sort of aspects of questions and kind of put them into the title. But there's a lot of questions in there, and it just was kind of a mess. It was kind of a mess. Um, and yeah, I mean, if you have a question, you show up for the Q&A. But if you don't have a question, people don't really show up for the Q&A. Doesn't really happen too much. And because people don't know what's in the Q&A, they don't watch it. So, and then there's the other point, which is that it's much more effective for me to use a lot of these questions. I can use some of these in one-off TikTok videos or maybe even a longer form YouTube video and just make it about the topic in the question. Other ones I can turn into emails, and also it's just in case you didn't notice from the fact that I'm late and sometimes these things don't happen. It's just with my schedule, sometimes things can come up. So, like, I'm flexible, but I have to be very flexible with myself, and so having to always have a specific time, it's sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I don't like letting you guys down. I don't like people telling people, "Oh, yeah, you gotta be here at this time," and then something comes up, I can't do it anymore. I'm only really, really firm with my windows for clients. Well, if you're a client and you have a window, that's different, but otherwise, this is just kind of part of my general work day. So, and a lot of different things come up. So, and I was just kind of, it was a great thing that we had going. We started doing this spring of 2020. Um, we're looking at 2.5 years, right? 2.5 years. It's been a really good run, and I appreciate you guys. I love all you guys. So let's dive in. All good things have to come to an end, but it doesn't mean that you and I are done. I'm still going to be around, still going to be on Twitter. We're just making a push to move things to the next level, and I feel like this is the end of an era. So anyway, you guys definitely have to smash the like button on this video, and you definitely have to leave a comment. Smash the like button, leave a comment on this video because it's the last one. You got to do it. You got to help me out. All right. So let us dive in. So, see if I'm thinking about using this one for something else. First question: how can I go into a girl's DMs in a way that sets me apart from other guys so I'm not just another dude messaging her? Just opening, not necessarily messaging in general. Okay. Well, if you want to set yourself apart from other guys, I mean, there is an element here of, I could give you some super can lines, some super can routine. But if you want to stand out from other guys, you have to be observant. And this is something that applies way beyond just sliding into a girl's DMs on social media. It also works with online dating. It's incredibly powerful, incredibly important. And that is that you pay attention to a woman and you see, okay, what is it about her profile? What can I infer about her? And you make assumptions about her and you message her accordingly. So i- I'm not telling you what exactly to say to a girl because if I could tell you exactly what to say to a girl, that would be generic. You have to use your own head. You have to be observant. And this is important in general with women. If you were going out, if you were approaching women on the street, yeah, can line can maybe help a little bit if you're just getting started. But the guys who always do really well with women, are present in the moment and they perceive something about her and they're able to say, okay, this is yeah, I know this about her. This girl is, you know, you have a you walk like a fairy, have a very light walk. It's like something that they just it can be absurd even, but it just comes there's an element of truth in it. She can feel the truth that comes from you. And it can be playful too. But that's what you have to do. So you look at a girl's profile and that's where you take it. Look at her account, that's where you take it. Remember when it comes to assumptions, the assumption doesn't have to be correct, but it has to be to a certain extent true for you. And it has to be real enough that even if it's not correct, it makes her feel inclined to correct you and is curious about where you came up with that assumption. Property Prince has a great comment here. By the way, Property Prince is killing it. So kills it with the ladies. So you definitely have to take this with not a grain of salt. Take it with seriousness. Used observance loads in online dating. Best opener I've ever found was want to know what I love about this photo? 100%. That is huge bait because it plays on a woman's ego. She's like, "Oh, he loves my photo. Why does he love my photo?" And it allows you so once you get her hooked in, and then from there, the rest is history. All right. Good stuff. Hey, Pat, what do you think about flirting and or having friends of the opposite sex? Is chemistry something that appears naturally and you're killing your libido if you don't do it? Is there a difference between flirting and friendships and willingness to commit slash build a life with someone? Is controlled flirting actually very good for mental and physical health? Okay, so there's a couple things here, and I'm going to tackle them one by one. So, what do I think about flirting and or having friends of the opposite sex? So, I think it's fine to have female friends if you're a man. Um, but this is the context thing. This is what I think needs to be understood here. Because there's a lot of stuff that guys say you can't have friends with the opposite sex if you're and the thing is if you're single, having female friends is fantastic. I mean, I've talked a ton about friend zoning women and how friend zoning women having female friends is the key to meeting women who you have a more than friend dynamic with. It's key to meeting women who you're going to hook up with. Makes it super easy. The female friends vouch for you and really act as like a lead generator. Um, and it's very appropriate in the single context to have these sort of, even with the friends themselves, it's very flirty dynamic because that's the kind of energy you're giving off. Now, once you get into a relationship, it's a bit of a different story. Now, every relationship is different, but one of the things that you'll assess is how many of these female friendships were really genuine and how many of them were clean, as in they didn't have this big agenda behind them. And this is, I think, something that guys are not willing to admit themselves, which is that most of your female friendships are not real friendships. They're validation farming. So the guy is going to, the girl flirts with him, he flirts with her. It may not even be that there's enough there for things to actually progress to any sort of physical dynamic, but both parties get this bit of validation from the fact that they can, they banter with each other, that there's this, teasing and touching, and it makes the other person feel attractive. And what you're basically doing is you're, playing with sexual energy with the other person. And that is really not a good foundation to build a relationship on. So if you get serious with a girl, one of the things you'll notice is a lot of female friends will start to, at first, they're like, oh my God, they're so excited because it's drama, but they don't want you to really be serious with her. They like it to be like something that's not going to last. And so and if there's indications that it is going to start to last, then they will usually be pretty cool to the girl, especially if you get engaged. Once you get engaged, and certainly once you get married, you just find out that a lot of these girls are like, well, he's done. There's no coming back for him. So what's the point? And you see it firsthand. And then you can see it for yourself that it was a big waste. Now, the other point I want to mention here about female friends is that it's one thing if you've had like a female friend your whole life, like maybe you knew each other, um, years before you met your current girlfriend. You knew each other when you were just kids, or maybe you had some formative experience in college. Fine. There might be a place for that woman as a friend in your life, but not a super close friend, not someone who you're going to just go and talk on the phone with and share personal stuff with. What you actually need to do with that female friend is you almost want your girlfriend to start to become friends with her. So you stay friends with them, but um, they're more now connected to the female half rather than to you. And that's a cleaner, more constructive way to build, because if you start to have close intimacy with the opposite sex when you're in a relationship, you can open the door to things. And I don't want to say it's a black and white situation, but I will say that the more you are actually serious and invested in your relationship, the more you'll start to understand that being really close to other members of the opposite sex outside of your family is usually a bad idea. And it's not clean. It doesn't lead to anything positive. It's not necessary. It's not necessary. You don't need that person in your life in that capacity. Doesn't mean they're not a good person, but it's just you don't need them in your life in that capacity. All right. So then you had the next question here. Is chemistry something that appears naturally and you're killing your libido if you don't do it? No. Chemistry is something that appears naturally, but killing your libido if you don't do it, that's like saying if you don't jerk off every time you're horny, are you killing your libido? There's no connection between that. That's just called self-control. That's all it is, called self-control. It's called maintaining perspective. It's called mastering your sexual energy. All right. Is there a difference between flirting and friendships and willingness to commit slash build a life with someone? Well, yeah, there's a difference. I just don't understand the question because, I mean, obviously, if you're flirting, obviously there's a difference between someone who's a friend or someone who you just flirt with and someone who you commit to and build a life with. Is controlled flirting actually very good for mental and physical health? I think it is good for guys who are not used to playing with sexual energy. So, and that's why I'm not like this blanket no female friends. Like if you're a single guy, I think there's a lot to be said about it. I think there's a lot of value in it. I'm not saying you have to go that route, but I think there's a lot of value in it. It's a effective route to take. And if you're a guy who doesn't feel comfortable interacting with women on more of a sexual level, then getting used to flirting even with girls who you're not interested in or you're not trying to pursue in that way can just get you used to the energy. I think it can be a really, really constructive, really, really helpful thing. So, and I guess that downstream is good for your mental health. I don't know about physical health. but it can help you feel like open up more. So it's good for your emotional health, I would say, not really physical or mental, but more your emotional health. All right, moving on. Hey, I need your perspective or advice on something if you have the time. 2 days ago, I, a 31-year-old man, was hanging out with this girl, a 28-year-old female. And by the way, we've been friends for years. We got intimate at her place while her wife, yeah, she's bi, was at work. Just got a little interlude here. I mean, 2022 is crazy. It's wild. I gotta tell you, just really an aside here. Um, some of the stories like this I hear is like stuff that you just didn't even hear like 10 years ago, you'd never hear stuff like this. 5 years ago, you'd never hear stuff like this. Gen Z is wild. I know this guy's not Gen Z, but the whole thing is still fucking wild. All right. We got intimate at her place while her wife, yeah, she's bi, was at work. I'm cool with her wife, and we three hang out from time to time. So today she texts me saying, I need space from you, nothing personal. My question to you is, how would you go about this? Like, I enjoy being her platonic friend, but being intimate was so much better. We didn't bang, but she was on top of me and we made out and I was humping her hard. She was giggling and said, I like this, and had her shirtless while we did not. And while we did that, she said things like, this is our secret. So is she just regretfully and not used to having a side piece? She is a sweet, feminine, good girl type and definitely not a loose girl like that. So did I confuse her, or is she recognizing that this can't go on because she might have feelings? Also, she grew up abused and with depression, so she's not exactly normal. I know it's a lot to read, but maybe you can give me advice, perspective. Thanks, Pat. Um, and between and by the way, even though I know I want to be intimate with her and I truly do like her, the intimacy is better than the platonic part, you know. Okay. So I appreciate the question. I'm going to be a little bit harsh here. I mean, even though I admit, and this is not very, you know, politically correct of me, but I just instinctively take less seriously the fact that the two of them are married. These two women are married and it's a guy. Um, it's so kind of weird actually to feel that in yourself because it feels less like infidelity, even though it is. And so I'm going to try to proceed from the modernist framework here, which is that, this is kind of shitty to be doing this. She's in a marriage and you're, trying to make something happen with her. Um, it never ends well if you do that. So, I mean, and especially because you've been cool with her wife and um you just I know you're thinking about this, like, what can I get out of the situation, this is what I want, but I would encourage you to think bigger picture with this kind of stuff in terms of where does this lead, what sort of consequences occur as a result of going down this path, because they're not going to be good. And so you can see here when she says, I need space from you, nothing personal. Yeah, she feels guilty because she's married and she cheated. That's why she doesn't. I mean, I wouldn't say that she's like super, super good girl in the sense, definitely not a loose girl. I mean, she just cheated on her wife and said, this is our secret. But yeah, she probably got guilty and isn't used to having a side piece. Most people aren't used to having a side piece. Most people don't do that. So I'm sure she feels guilty about it. There may have been and she probably is developing some degree of feelings. Doesn't want it to progress further because she's afraid of where that might go. It was fun, it was transgressive, but then if she actually goes and she fucks you and this keeps going, it's going to destroy her life, and she's not going to get anything good out of it because she's going to hate you for destroying her life. And once that it doesn't end well, because so much of why it works is because things are, how do I put it? So much of why all this stuff works is because there is another outside party. So it's like it's risky, it's sexy. I mean, look, I think that there's probably an element here that she's not like really a lesbian. I mean, I know you said she's bi, but she married a woman. I mean, I expect that there's some element of that going on here, though I don't know that. But yeah, you said she grew up abused and with depression, so she's not exactly normal. I mean, this is also the reason that a lot of women have become lesbians because they have an issue with the masculine because they've had negative experience in the past, but it doesn't actually change their fundamental attraction. But keep in mind the fact that, you know, in a certain sense, you're trying to re-perpetuate this by, you know, reinforcing sort of a negative perception of the masculine as being this dangerous thing. I mean, I'm not look, whatever. Obviously, she's attracted to it on a certain level, but just really think about what your long-term goals are. Um, you want to be intimate with her, you like her. Well, I mean, is you just where does that lead? Does that mean you'd want to marry her instead? That you'd want something really serious with her? Um, it doesn't seem like this is going to go anywhere good. But but yeah, so that's that. Your call how to proceed. It dovetailed really well with the prior question about having female friends, about how there's always problems with that, having friends with the opposite sex. Um, Doc Roach, just to follow up on your little question here. Don't you advise to have female friends to open up doors to meet more women? But then you just said it's not necessary to have women friends to flirt with. I'm talking about when you're in a relationship. It's not necessary to have women friends to flirt with. When you're in a relationship, it's not necessary to have that. But part of developing the friend circle and having a lot of friends, a lot of female friends, a little bit of flirtation will go a long way in making more female friendships because they're not because you're adding that validation element to it, which wasn't really there before. It's just kind of like you want to be friends with if you have a super hot girl and she wants to be friends with you and she's you know playful and touch your arm and kind of like laughing at you, but she's not actually fully committing to anything with you. Like she's just a flirt. I mean, you kind of like that as a guy. It's like you got this hot girl who's flirting with you. Even if she doesn't take things further, even if there's not enough there to take it further, it feels good. So, all right, cool. Let's move to the next question. Hi, Pat. I know your dating Q&As are more for men, but I just wonder if you take my question in as well. I'm a straight woman and I've been dating narcissistic men 2 times in a row in a span of 8 years. Have you ever worked with narcissistic male clients? If yes, what are your advices for women who attract narcissists over and over again? All right. Well, first off, I have to tell you this. If you are attracting narcissists over and over again, you really got to look at yourself in the mirror because that's a that's a real tell that you've got stuff to sort out. And I say that with all love, but um, and also I don't know if this actually applies to you, but it is a bit of a red flag when a woman says all of her ex are narcissists, because it's usually an indication that I'm not saying that this is the case in your specific case. Like, you asked a question in a very nice way, but just be wary of saying that to people like my exes were narcissists because people will usually look at you and be like, okay, this woman is blaming everybody else but herself, and which is a red flag. So I'm not saying that's you, but keep that in mind if you frame this stuff in the future for people. So, I have not worked with narcissistic male clients because a narcissist would never want to work with someone like me. Narcissists don't like to work with people in general because a narcissist doesn't ask for help because a narcissist has everything figured out. A narcissist would only work with somebody who would validate that they were right about everything. So they would pay somebody who was an expert to affirm that they were actually the expert and that they were great. They would not like to hear any kind of tough truth, and they would stay away from people who weren't in it to simply inflate their ego. I have experience knowing narcissistic men, and they suck. I will say though that one of the reasons that they're appealing to women sometimes is because they have, until you get close and you see how fragile they are, they have a very, very strong sense of self. You know, they will always really talk themselves up, and if your own frame is a little shaky and if you haven't done as much inner work and sort of been able to smell your own bullshit, it can be tough to see like, oh, this person who's talking a big game actually isn't just a total, dweeb, in that actually he's got all sorts of problems and he's really, really fragile. Narcissists are very, very fragile. They have a seriously fragile ego. They just, to protect their ego, they create an entire fantasy world in their head, the inverse of it. So if you are attracting narcissist over and over again, what I would recommend is that you probably should take a break from guys who are overly the top cocky. You have to assess why you are you have to assess what drew you to the narcissist to begin with. I mean, was it that they were over the top cocky? Like, what were the key traits? What were the key things that the narcissist said that pulled you in? And I would also look at your own needs and are you taking care of yourself? Because if you're not taking care of yourself very well, you can fall into the pattern of being someone who just exists to serve the other person. And narcissists really demand that from the people in their life. Like if you're not, you know, making the narcissist feel like they're the top of the world, if you're not constantly helping to shore up their ego presentation of themselves, then um, you're a bad person. You're worth punishing. So that's what I would say. All right. Now we have to like that. We have to smash that like button. That's what we have to do. Smash the like button. Some of you guys haven't done that yet. Hit it. Smash it. All right. Another question here. I'd like to know your thoughts on if defensiveness is an inherent quality in women due to an exaggerated need to maintain innocence and not feel the shame trigger that most women deal with. My last girlfriend did some things that made me uncomfortable, and it ended because when I told her in a very healthy and direct way that what she did hurt me, she would not apologize and kept being defensive. It really hurt to be so vulnerable with her and her not at least apologize and seek forgiveness, even with the understanding that her intentions were good and I wasn't blaming or shaming her. It makes me scared to love again as I debate if there are really women out there who aren't like this and can show compassion. This is such a good question. I love this question. Absolutely love this question. Thank you for sending it in. Um, it is a really, really interesting thing to consider. The red pill talks about this as solipsism, and it's a sense that the woman is the only thing that exists in the universe. So that means that it always returns to the woman. It's never a matter of what um, you know she could have done better. It's never a matter of her, she can't accept responsibility, basically. Now, the reason for this, you suggest an exaggerated need to maintain innocence and not feel the shame trigger that most women deal with. I think it's a very astute observation. What I would say is this: if you call a woman out, most of the time they will not acknowledge it, they'll deny it, but it does affect them. So while they don't necessarily say something, one of the reasons that they don't say it is because many of these women already have such a poor sense of self that They already have so much shame, they already have so much self-criticism that what you're doing is when you basically tell them that they did this thing, it reinforces shame in them, and they wanna get away from that, and so they blame you. I think that's a major reason for it, because I know that women who have denied it, um, don't feel good about themselves in general. If you were to deny these kind of things, they don't feel good about themselves in general, and if you actually dig into stuff with them, they have a lot of self-hate, um, they really feel like they're unworthy of love, that they mess everything up. They just have a hard time admitting it. I think they themselves have a hard time being vulnerable, uh, and I think they struggle very often with their capacity to hurt other people. So there's a lot of tripwires around the female ego. I think another element of it, though, is the nature of men and women. So as a man, throughout your entire life, you have to take responsibility. If you don't take responsibility, then you're not able to grow and improve. And so it's a masculine thing to improve. Self-improvement is a masculine trait because the masculine grows by its competence, right? The feminine does not grow by that. The feminine grows by praise, and the feminine just wants to be as it is and to be accepted for what it is. It's not that one of these energies is right and one is wrong. They're different. Healthy individuals have a healthy balance of the two in the sense of it being a paradox. So, you should know as a man that you have intrinsic value. There's an element that doesn't matter if you win or lose, that you are loved, that your soul has inherent worth. At the same time, if you apply that barometer to the standpoint of being a man, it's not going to cut it because a man has value based on what he does and what he accomplishes and what value he adds to the world, who he cares for, who he takes care of. So men are very tapped into that energy, and because they need to take responsibility to improve, there's an inherent tendency for men to say, "You know what? Yeah, I messed this up. I got to fix it." But for the woman, if you do it, what you're doing is you're approaching her from the standpoint of masculine energy, that you are you messed up, you have to do better. Here's how you messed up, just apologize for it. For a woman, I mean, this is such like a interesting thing, but to a certain extent, when you're asking a woman to do that, you're asking her to be like a man, because women don't want to acknowledge that, especially not women who are undeveloped. The more integrated woman will be able to acknowledge that. But you're essentially asking her to respond to you like a man. You know, a man harms you and you want satisfaction, you want an apology, or you want to fight, right? But a woman does it. For a woman to admit she did something wrong would be to admit that she's not worthy of love in the feminine mind. And so even though what you say could be true and it stings and she knows it sits in the background of her mind, she has a hard time actually accepting it. She has a hard time acknowledging it. And so she tries to push it off to the side. Doesn't mean that what you did was wrong, but just keep this in mind when it comes to women, that um, this is a big mistake that the manosphere makes in general, because it's very focused on it's for men, but women respond differently. So, you tell a woman, your truth, but um, don't be so obsessed with her responding in the proper way, because if you were to really push that, a lot of women, girls who game will often, this is a really important point. See, so much was opened up from this question. girls who game really hard, who are really good at it, very often they will tell guys about how they learned so much from this thing and how they were so sorry about this, and guys, like, they eat it up because it's like, "Oh, man, she's really accountable, she's so different." But it's just a fucking act. She's just saying it because it's what you wanna hear. So, to a certain extent, when a woman has a hard time acknowledging it at that moment, like, trust that it landed, and don't, this was the end of a relationship, okay, whatever, but don't expect her to necessarily respond, because if you were to get the response, usually it's just a manipulation anyway. And I know that that's kind of crappy to hear, but we have to remember that women are different than men. Some women are very, very open-hearted and are very, very humble, and they won't do this. But your average girl is going to create defense mechanisms around her ego and will not acknowledge it in that moment, even though when you're not there, she will look at herself in the mirror and she say, "You are such a bitch. You're a terrible person." And then she'll go do something to try to get away from that feeling. That's how it works. Great question. All right. Um, we got a real troll in here, didn't we? How do I do this? We got some stuff here. I had this with my ex. Had a moment where I was sad and didn't want to talk because a close family member's daughter had died. Was getting nagged at a bit. Response was, "Now I feel like a bitch," crying. Yep. Yep. Treat her like a child. Exactly. Exactly. All right. Now let's see here. So we got two more questions. So we got this one. Property prints. I pushed this one off a bit. I know you had one. I pushed this one off a bit because I was thinking I might do it into an email, but I think I'm going to do it here. So, so this was about my tweet I put out a couple weeks ago. It may not be as hot when a woman isn't expressive in bed, but it doesn't mean that she isn't enjoying sex. A lot of women just don't know what to do, have their own insecurities in the bedroom. The question is, what about when girls are super expressive but are stuck in their head? It means it's an act, right? Based off insecurity or wanting to manipulate the guy? Yes. Um, Fundamentally, I would say more though. Well, insecurity and manipulation go hand in hand with each other. But there's basically, like, when a woman is very expressive, usually it's because she's seen it from porn. And she thinks this is what guys like. So I'm gonna put on this performance for him, and I'm it's gonna be like he's gonna love me for it because I'm gonna be so enthusiastic, and it's good. I mean, it's true. Men do like it when a woman is enthusiastic and expressive, but if you have experience with women, you can kind of see that this is a little bit manufactured and that she's doing it to try to get a response out of you. She's trying to game you very often. The interesting thing about these super expressive women is that very often they don't come. Very often they don't or they don't come from like penetration. It's more, maybe you can get them off through like the clit, or very often they'll actually even need like a vibrator or something to get off because they're super disconnected from their bodies. Whereas a girl who's less expressive in bed can sometimes be very much like in a receiving mode. It's not the ideal. And because they're not really participating, they're also leaving stuff on the table. But very often, like a less expressive woman can enjoy the sex more on a physical level. She's just not um, being as much of an active participant in it, which is less enjoyable for you. But yeah, it's being stuck in their head, and a lot of times the girls don't even know how to not act. And you think about this for guys, it's very similar. Guys get into very like much performance mindset. Of course, guys get screwed up a bit more because a guy can actually like a girl can perform in bed, and for the most part you can be none the wiser. But if a guy fails to perform in bed, he's not going to get his dick up, right? Or he's going to come too early. So it's but men and women both have the same problem, and it's fundamentally that you're in your headspace and you're not really able to just be present in the moment and enjoy it. You feel like you have to the things that you do, you're acting upon the other person. So you have to have sex in a certain way because you have to get the other person to respond in a certain way. And that can take a lot of time to deprogram. Um, and yeah, it's rooted in insecurity. It's a great question. Okay, let's see here. Now we have there's one I missed. What's the best place for a traditional woman to meet a masculine man? So, the best place for a traditional woman to meet a masculine man, um, Twitter. There's some truth to that actually. I'm not fully joking. Um, because there's a lot of guys who are at least aspiring to be masculine on Twitter. So actually, it is a pretty good place to meet guys. And there's a ton of successful relationships that have come from Twitter. So it's not like this is just something theoretical. But the other way that you would try to meet a masculine man is you'd go, well, where does a masculine man go? Right? He's going to be doing some sort of fighting, right? Something active, most likely. Um, but yeah, certainly a fight of like a gym, a a fight club, like an MMA studio. Uh, you could also find a masculine guy, and there's going to be more of a mixed bag with this, but you could find a masculine guy in entrepreneurship circles. Um, because there's definitely a degree of masculinity required to. So if you want to, so basically, it's a woman gain involved in male fields. So that's you're gonna find masculine guys there. If you're more in the tech space, crypto, maybe a little bit less so, but still you have such a high ratio of men to women. It's a good way to get attention. But yeah, masculine guys, you want to do things like where are guys really pushing their limits physically, mentally, emotionally. Um, so you're gonna be looking for like physical, MMA studios and entrepreneurship and the like, places where guys really want to strive to be their best. So think about it. Think about that. And there's a lot of niches too. Like a lot of it is also just the higher perform like in any industry that requires high performance and competitiveness. So you can find them in corporate America as well. You can find them in politics, but a lot of those guys are also looking for validation in politics. So you got to be really careful for the most part. All right, last question. Last question of the Q&A. Smash the like button for the last question of the Pat Stedman Q&A series. Hey Pat, I know you prefer to give advice to those who pay for it. I do, actually. You guys can do coaching, links below. Check it out. But I didn't know if my situation would be a good case study. I'll try to be brief. Been dating a girl for over 2 months now. I'm 30, she's 29. Met in person at the office. Things started out amazing. We were giving our hearts to each other without fear. Lately, she had been acting differently, so I called her out on it, and she admits she's trying to use her head instead of her feelings because she's been burned before. At the moment, I, of course, accepted it, but since then, I've noticed it's impossible for me to pump the brakes with this girl. I've been in a long-term relationship before, and this girl has given me the one vibes. So today I told her that I feel like I'm giving more than I'm getting and that I'm going to give her some space to figure out what she wants from this and that I'm always here to talk when she's ready. She hasn't responded yet, so I don't know how that was received. I'm wondering if you think I made the right decision. Giving more than what I was getting was filling me with anxiety, and I hope this decision will reveal whether she is truly the one. Feel free to share my story if you think it's valuable to you. I love your tips and advice you share to men for free. God bless. This is a great question. So this is what is going on, most likely. Whenever you have this really hot and fast romance where things are just so intense and amazing and falling into place, and then she has some, you know, she gets uncomfortable and pulls back, and then you feel like you're getting over invested, so you pull back. And so what happens is that it generally starts to be a little bit of a push and pull, and then she comes to you and she says she hasn't responded to you yet. She may or may not, but just given the intensity of this, whether or not she says, "Yeah, I don't think it's gonna work," or whether she tries to go and, make stuff happen automatically, like, rushes in to say, "No, I was really into you, but I just got afraid and I do wanna make this work," but, gets in all this kind of bullshit. It sounds like an anima dynamic, not the one. The one is not this complicated. The one is a lot easier. When I say the one, I don't think there's like only one. But when you're in a healthier dynamic, something that's building up for really long term, there's not this much drama so early on. There's not this big pull back and forth because what it sounds like is that there's a lot of fantasy that's being built up and then a lot of overinvestment and then fear about the overinvestment and pulling back, and it becomes a power dynamic about who cares more because both parties are afraid of getting hurt and both parties are kind of infatuated with the other one but then feel like they get lost in the other one, and that's scary. That's a classic anima dynamic. Because what's happening is you're interacting with each other's unconscious masculine and feminine. So you're so drawn to her because it brings up things in your unconscious that you've not dealt with and vice versa. And so you're like seduced by that. You want to get closer to it, but it's also scary. You feel like it's going to take over you consciously. So there's this fight that occurs because you're merging together, but you both want to maintain your separate identity. It's a very, very powerful romantic dynamics, um, but not usually enduring. So, do I think you made the right decision? On balance, I would say, yeah, you did, because you obviously felt like you were giving too much. And if you were to tell her that, she'd probably either pull back or she'd say she'd try harder, but then would pull back. I mean, she just pulled back basically because the second that she pulled back, she started this power dynamic. So you yourself pulling back at this point is, tactically about as good of a move as you're going to get, but it's not likely to fix everything. It's likely to, you know, it's likely to have her go right back into it and, maybe give you some sort of really heartfelt message that pulls you back in again. And then there's a lot of different things that she can do. But at the end of the day, what you're looking for is a woman's behavior. She tells you she's been burned, that she had moved into her headspace, but then she pulls back. And even afterwards, even after she tells you her problem, she still is not putting everything into it. Space is your friend with girls like that because she's exhibiting avoidant tendencies. So I think you made the right decision on balance. But the bigger point I would make to you is don't just look at this tactically, keep the higher picture perspective because she is unlikely to change the way that she's investing in this right now. You're likely to be constantly putting more in than she's ready for. So you can wait and have her come back and maybe you guys continue dating, but really assess her more accurately. When a woman starts to pull back like that, I would not view it like, "What can I do to get her to stop pulling back?" I would view it like, "She's losing her chance with me." And to then start to hold her in a much more cautious regard going forward and to not put as much of your heart into her. It's almost like she has to win it back over again. So guard your own heart and make sure you treat yourself with self-respect in this process. Um, so yeah. All right, gentlemen. Well, it's been real. Appreciate you all. Still be around here, so I'll see you next time. Not on here though. But I'll see you on Twitter, see you on the next YouTube videos. Take care.